good afternoon. I congratulate you all. You've got back from lunch on time. And I'm very happy to be here at this conference, which is extremely exciting, and glad to share some thoughts with you this afternoon about investing in the creative industries. But what you're probably thinking right now is, who the hell is this guy? So let me say just a little bit about what I do and who I do it with. Essentially, what I do with my colleagues in various organizations is to bridge the world between creativity and finance. I work for an investment company called Ingenious. We're most famous for our investments in film and television. A lot of our films you will have heard of: Avatar, Life of Pi, Suffragette. We've made over 200 films. We do a lot of television. We've done a lot of venture capital investment in music publishing, music festivals, marketing services companies. We invest in creativity. I'm also very privileged to be a visiting fellow in creative industries at Goldsmiths in the University of London. Goldsmiths specializes in teaching entrepreneurship and cultural management. And I'm involved there in postdoctoral research, researching risk in audio-visual business models. So we have a research capability and a teaching capability. And I've got lots of other involvements in arts and culture organizations. I chair a classical music business and theater and various other things. So my experience is, and my perspective is, trying to bridge the gap between creativity in the traditional sense of the term, culture and creativity, and finance. And I'm not going to say very much to this slide, but it is a complex conceptual landscape. You will already have heard several speakers using these terms: cultural industries, creative economy, knowledge economy. People sometimes use these terms as if they were interchangeable, and they're not. But this is about classification, and classification is a slightly boring subject, so I'm not going to focus on it this afternoon, except to say that, of course, it's also an important subject, particularly from the point of government. Because you can't judge the success or failure of any policy unless you're clear about what you're measuring. So just let me be clear that the terminology that I'm using and the concept that I'm using, you will see on the slide behind me. It's the concept that was developed by the Department of Culture in the UK in 1998, 2001. You'll see the definition there. You'll see that intellectual property is crucial to it. And we'll come on and say a little more about that in the session behind me. So this is, let's be clear, in policy terms, this is a very complex conceptual landscape. And some people use the term creative industries in different ways from other people. And we do need to establish some kind of clarity around that. Now, to get to the subject of the business, as everybody knows, the digital revolution has had an enormous impact on the cultural and creative industries. That's Brussels terminology, the CCIs. Very much the same terminology, by the way, as was used in that very interesting presentation before lunch by the gentleman from the culture minister here. So the digital shift has had a completely transformational effect on business models, on production, on art forms, on distribution. It's led to some very interesting changes. I don't know whether any of you have had the chance to look at a book by a lady at Harvard Business School. Her name is Elbers, Professor Elbers, and she wrote this book a couple of years ago called Blockbusters. And she showed that the effect of the digital shift and the internet effect had been to transform the hits into even bigger hits and the misses into more numerous misses. What do I mean by that? If you take the music market, Lady Gaga, Rihanna, Katy Perry, their hits are bigger and bigger and bigger because of the internet effect. And all those guys who make records that nobody's ever heard of sell little or nothing. So you have the blockbuster effect. But at the same time, you have also an extraordinary fragmentation of markets, which is very good for niche production, niche consumption. If you are interested, for example, as I am, in obscure 17th century French music, then it's never been better, guys. You have a fantastic opportunity to find it. So we have this kind of paradoxical thing going on of the hits getting bigger, but also the fragmentation of markets. Yeah, there's good news and bad news, I have to say, in the digital shift. I'm going to say something now which is very uncool, but the digital shift has made piracy much worse. I was standing at a bus stop in Venice on Sunday, and there was this English guy who was boasting to his girlfriend about the number of movies he downloaded illegally from the dark net. I kind of resisted the temptation to punch him on the nose, you know, because actually that activity takes money away from the creative producers who are our partners, and it's assisted by the digital shift. That's the bad news. The good news is the digital shift will also find a solution to that problem, and it may be in the blockchain. We'll see. So the digital revolution has had an extraordinary effect on creative business, and this last bullet point here is the key. You know, the model has changed. 10 years ago, there were lorries going backwards and forwards from Warsaw to Gdansk, full of DVDs and CDs. That world is gone. Now it's about collecting raindrops of revenue, licensing fees, royalties, subscriptions, and micropayments. And here's to get to the main point of what I want to say. All of this creates enormous challenges for investors in what I call a YouTube world. There's the infinite choice problem. There's the problem of free. If people aren't paying for stuff, then by definition it's harder to get them to pay for stuff. And yes, I know, you know, about the new the hybrid business models and freemium and so on. Freemium works very well in the games industry, doesn't work very well in film and TV. So the problem of free is a real issue for investors. Then we have the growing power of internet platforms and aggregators. You know, you've got Google. Google now consumes something like 85% of all advertising revenues, digital advertising revenues. It's got huge power in all of those marketing services and advertising spaces. By the way, has anybody ever tried to negotiate with Google? Pretty difficult. So there are real issues around the concentration of power on internet platforms. The business models are changing very fast, especially in mobile games. There are big issues around access to finance, as has already been mentioned by several speakers. But I must tell you that working for an investment business, there is another side to the access to finance issue, and that is we often find it hard to find investable propositions. That is to say, companies that are sufficiently ready to be invested in. So investor readiness needs to be a very important part of any country's agenda in creative space. But here's the big point that I need to make from an investor point of view. When we are looking to decide whether to invest or not, what we do is analyze risk. Where does the risk lie? And there are two very, very different kinds of business. And you won't find this analysis in any of the textbooks. But from our point of view, it's crucial to distinguish between services businesses or demand-led businesses, design companies, advertising agencies, where essentially the risk is not that great. All you need to start a business in design is an office, a mobile, a client, and maybe €100, and you're off. That's the demand model. That's completely different from the content businesses that are our bread and butter. These are film companies, games companies, TV companies, where you have to find the investment up front to make the film, to make the game, to make the music video. The risk profile there is much higher, and we make our judgments on an analysis of where the risk profile lies and how successfully the risk is being mitigated by the people running those businesses. And our business is about risk mitigation in the end. Now, if I may be really immodest, nobody's asked me to do this, but if I was to be asked to advise any government about what you need to do to be successful in this kind of space, the cultural and creative industries, I would say that these are the key issues. First of all, that government needs to be seen to committing to creative values, and it needs to be seen to supporting an industrial strategy which supports those values. And by the way, let us not pretend that the UK has the answers to all of these questions. It doesn't. I know that the UK has a reputation for being world-leading. In some ways it is, some ways it isn't. But it's interesting that in the UK right now, there is a consultation about industrial strategy, and part of that has a focus on the creative industries. It's being led by a man called Sir Peter Bazalgette, and we have got to learn as well as other countries from experience to date. So we are learning, we are changing the way that we're doing things, and they will go on changing. But you have to have a commitment to creative values and a supportive industrial strategy. You obviously need an advanced communications infrastructure. I'll say nothing more except to say that South Korea is the gold standard. I think you need a mixed economy of funding models. You need public money and you need private money. You need loans and grants. You need debt and you need equity. You need all of these sources in a mixed economy. I could say more than that if I had time. You need a stable structure for partnership between the public and private sectors. And you need independent representative structures, trade associations, artists' bodies, all in dialogue with government. But finally, on this page, I would say that this last bullet point, but two, developed policies for cultural and entrepreneurial education, management and training, that is going to be crucial going forward. So let me just finish with a thought around that. There is a global opportunity for all countries. The global market for cultural goods and services is expanding. It has been expanding for about 10 years. And as UNCTAD research showed very clearly, it even expanded in 2008 when the rest of the global economy contracted. So the global market is growing. I would say if you're looking for a public policy goal as a government, you could do better than to say what we want to do is to get a bigger share of that global market for cultural goods and services. And if you want to do that, if that is the ambition, then what you need to do in partnership, public and private sectors collaborating with each other, is you have to invest in three places. You have to invest in creative talent. You have to invest in technical talent, the stuff that goes on behind the camera, and most important, I would say, you have to invest in the business talent that is able then to cooperate and partner with creative talent. This is the big difference between Europe and the United States. In the United States, creative business has been proper business for 100 years. We're only just beginning to do creative stuff in a proper business-like way in many parts of Europe. So that's what I think you need to do. Invest in talent, invest in 3 different kinds of talent, and thank you for listening, and good luck.